Take it to the floor now. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Take it to the floor now. Yeah, to the floor. To the floor now.
Hey everybody, Always Dizzy here. And here it is. I am back with a video from my first round from the 2024 BC Open. I know that a lot of you enjoy these tournament recap reports, so if you do enjoy them, give me a thumbs up. Helps me know what type of content you like. Yeah, so I actually came back from, let's see, today is Friday, so I came back I came back on Monday, so I needed a few days to kind of get caught up with work and import some of the games into PGNs and prepare these videos. There's a lot that goes into getting my videos from my phone, collecting all my games, setting all this stuff up here, and you'd be surprised. There's a lot of work that goes into these videos, so it takes me some time before I can actually get them posted. So the BC Open is one of the largest tournaments in BC for the year, but we have so many tournaments now. We're kind of starting to get a little bit spoiled in that regard. I spent a fair bit on this tournament because the hotel that I was staying at is kind of a casino / hotel, and it was like $250 a night, so really expensive. Also, I took a different ferry to the venue this time. There's a new ferry here called the Hello Ferry. And it's a much faster ferry. It's a passenger-only ferry, but I decided to take that for the first time. I ended up only getting 2 hours of sleep, 2 to 3 hours of sleep, because I was kind of up late, scrambling to pack and everything, because I had to get up really early, like 5 o'clock, because I took the earliest ferry over. The ferry ride was a little traumatic for me because, as you know, I'm always dizzy. Like I get dizzy very easily. I have a medical issue in my inner ear. And anyways, this ferry was much smaller than the normal ferry that I used to take. And because of that, and because it's so much faster, it was going. And I couldn't believe how fast it was. It was like a speedboat, essentially. I sat with strangers because I purchased the cheapest seat available. So I was sitting with a cluster of strangers at like a table of 4 on the ferry. And to make it worse, I was backwards. My seat was facing backwards because it was a seat of 4, right? It's like kind of like a train or something. There was like 4 seats, and I was seated backwards. So the whole time the boat is going like really fast and rocking, and I'm going backwards. So for a lot of it, I was just had my eyes closed and just trying not to throw up. So that was kind of tiring. Then I took an Uber to the venue, which is a new venue. Again, this hotel / casino. Haven't been there before. Tried the Uber share for the first time, which I would recommend. It's cheaper, and you just like pick 1 or 2 people up on the way, and it doesn't, it's on the way, and it saves you money. So that went well. Yeah, and recently I had been going to tournaments a day early so that I wouldn't have to wake up so early and have the stress of travel. But to save money, because the hotel is so expensive, I went the day of, as I said. So I was tired already by the time I got to the tournament area. Plus, I got there early because the next ferry would have been too late. It would have been too tight. So I got there like 2 hours early. And so, okay, that's my spiel. I just want to give some information about my first round opponent. Oh yeah, and also there were about, I'd have to check again, but I think there were about 280 players. So it was a big turnout. In fact, the opening ceremony, the mayor of Burnaby, which is where the hotel was at, the mayor and some of the council people were there. And there's 4 sections: an under 1,000, under 1,400, under 1,800, and a premier. I was torn between the premier and the under 1,800 section, but I decided to play in the under 1,800 section because first place was $700 and there were trophies. So one of my goals in chess is to get a trophy as an adult. And so I decided to play in the under 1,800 section, even though I knew that the premier section would have been a lot better for my rating gain, because you're not playing lower rated players. Okay, so my first round opponent was Liam 2. I had not heard of his name before. This was his 3rd classical over the board tournament. He had played a bunch of quicker time controls before, but this was his 3rd classical. Now, it was kind of scary because he had never lost a game. So he played 10 games previously, 10 or 11 games. I think it was 10 games. Is that right? Because I thought he had a 6th rounder. Okay, but 10 games, and his score was 9 out of 10. So he played 10 games between 2 tournaments, and his first tournament he scored 5 out of 5. And then he played in an under 1,800 section in his second tournament, and he scored 4 out of 5 with 2 draws. And one of those draws was against a 1,700 rated player. So he's only rated 1388, obviously underrated. That's just how it is. Online, he's 1,900 on chess.com bullet, and he was like 22 or 2250 on Lee Chess Bullet. So that gives you some context of his strength, and also give some context of the difference in CFC rating and online rating. So he's I forget if it was 2,200 or 22. I think peak he was 2,250 on Lee Chess Bullet, but yeah, 1,300 CFC. Okay, let's jump into the game, but that should give you some background. I was tired. I was already very tired here. 2 hours of sleep and then that travel. Okay. So I was white and I played e4. And he played e6. And I think I did prepare for him a little bit. He didn't have too many games that I saw. What I remembered is I think he played the French. I can't even remember that well right now, but I think he had a line in the French that he played, but he didn't have a great move on like move 15 or 14 or 15, and so I was planning to get into that position, and then I had a response prepared for that. So I played d4. He played d5. Is there a way to disable the showing of the arrows? There probably is, but I don't want to bother doing that right now. It's just kind of annoying. Can I right click? Okay, I won't bother doing that. But okay, d5 was played. I played knight d2, the Tarrasch variation of the French. And he played c5 here. So, yeah, I can't remember exactly what I had prepared for him, but he ended up not playing that line. He played something different. So that was slightly annoying, but that's usually what ends up happening. It's kind of rare for your opponent to play what you expect them to play. I took on d5. He recaptured. I played knight gf3. So this is all familiar waters for me. Had this position many times. This is actually very, very solid way for black to play. In fact, this is dead equal, like dead equal. White has no advantage here. Knight f6, bishop b5 check, bishop t7. And I might have thought here for not too long, but it's only more recently that I have started to remember that taking on d7 is the best reply, because it might not seem like the most natural move. Well, maybe it is the most natural move, but it also feels a little strange to bring the bishop out, trade it off, and let black develop. But that is the main line, and it is the best move, because there's not a whole lot of other better options than that. Because if we avoid that trade, like if we retreat the bishop, that's going to cost us a tempo anyways. So I took on d7. He recaptured with a knight. I castled here. So this is all theory. So for those lower rated people watching right now, I castled and I didn't take on c5 here because I'm basically waiting for black to move this bishop, because he can't just sit around and not move that bishop, right? He needs to castle. So since black needs to move the bishop anyways, I castle and I'm waiting for him to move the bishop somewhere, and then I take on c5 so that he has to move the bishop again. If I take immediately on c5, he gets to move his bishop out, which he was planning to do anyways. So by castling first, he essentially wastes a move by moving the bishop first, and then I take. And I'm not worried about black taking on d4, because I can just play knight b3 and recapture it that way, and he's left with an isolated pawn. Or I think I might even just have rook e1 there first, might even be better. Yeah. So I castled, and he played bishop e7. So what happened next, I think, was influenced by the fact that I only had 2 hours sleep. And I spent 7 minutes on my reply here. And the weird thing about that, and by the way, the time control here was 90 plus 30. I should mention that, because the previous tournament was 9 rounds of 50 plus 10, but this was 90 plus 30. So 7 minutes isn't that big of a deal. But what made it a little strange for me is that I've had this position many times before. Not so much with the knight on d7, but I've had this position before, and so it was just strange that I spent 7 minutes on my reply. And I'm just reading my notes here if you see my eyes start this way. And I think part of what made me hesitate here was that I didn't quite remember black being able to recapture on c5 with the knight. And so I was just trying to figure out, like, wait, like, is something different about this position? Because I seem to recall that when I take on c5, like d takes c5 here, I seem to recall that only the bishop can recapture. And so that kind of just threw me off a little bit. And I was like, okay, well, hang on, like, let's not be too hasty here, because I don't remember this being a move. Yeah, so that just made me kind of slow down a little bit. But whoops, I did take on c5, and he did take with the knight, which makes sense. I think black can also take with the bishop. I forget. I don't have the opening database here right now, but taking with the knight makes sense. And he did take with it. And I played knight b3, which is thematic. Just, I mean, we can't keep the knight on d2, right? So played knight b3. And then often what happens is a setup of the pawn going to c3 and the b knight going to d4. I think even the f knight can go to d4 in some cases. And it's a very equal position. And I wasn't really worried about knight takes b3, because even though we get double pawns, the benefit of that is we are trading when black has an isolated pawn. And the more we trade, the better it is for me in an endgame, even with the double pawns against that isolated pawn. So he castled. And then I spent 5 minutes on my reply. So just getting back to what I just said, and there's a section in Jeremy Silman's 4th edition of How to Reassess Your Chess where he talks about the isolated pawn, and that chapter really can't think of the word, but it really I can't think of the word, but it I felt that chapter, and I took it to heart quite a bit. It was one of like two. It wasn't a chapter; it was a section. It was one of two sections from that book that I really remember, and I won't be able to extract from my brain. It's just kind of cemented in my brain now. And I knew some of the ideas before, but the way he wrote it was very simplified. So when the opponent has an isolated pawn, well, especially an isolated D pawn. Whoops! Did not mean to do that. Did not mean to do that. Trading is good, usually. Trading material, because it gives our opponent dynamic play, right? It gives them two open files to work with, and it also gives them more attacking chances because of this mobility and more dynamic opportunities. And it's a long-term weakness, and so trading material is good because in the end game, the fewer pieces there are, the greater this weakness holds true. And so I was fine here to trade material. As I explained before, I would have been happy, or at least fine, if black had taken on b3. And so I was considering taking on c5. In fact, I was considering that back here when I was looking at whoops. I hate how ChessBase does that. I'm trying to get rid of the arrows, but I can't click on the board. I have to click outside the board. I have to remember that. So even here, when I was thinking of d takes c5, and then knight takes c5, knight b3, I was considering that trade. So here I was considering knight takes c5 just to simplify the position, because logically it made complete sense to me. We're just trading material, and this d5 pawn shows itself as a greater weakness. But in the end, I ended up going with familiarity over reason. So I went with what I was used to, which is again this like c3 knight b d4 setup. and I played knight bd4 in the game, which is not a bad move at all. But I think if you nail it down with the engine, it's like a tiny preference to take on c5. We're talking like 20 centipawns of a difference. And so I should have went with reason instead of just what I was familiar with. Yeah. So I don't know what prompted me to avoid trading. Oh, no, there was another reason too. Okay. I looked at knight takes c5. Can I do arrows again? Okay. I looked at knight takes c5 and then bishop takes c5. And then I saw I even have a decent follow-up of bishop g5. And then I saw queen d6. And then I kind of just felt like, well, what am I gaining out of that? I felt it was fine for white, but for some reason I just ended up going with what I was familiar with. But queen d6 is actually a mistake in that line. So knight takes c5. I'll put it on the board, but knight takes c5, bishop takes c5, bishop g5, queen d6, because I just didn't realize that I could actually just take the knight. And the queen can't take because then I can take on d5, which I saw this actually when I was calculating, but then I saw queen b2 and I didn't see in my mind that the bishop was hanging. So let me just go backwards without putting the moves on the board. So that was just kind of sloppy calculation on my part. I saw knight takes c5, bishop c5, bishop g5, queen d6, and bishop takes f6, queen takes f6, and queen takes d5. And I just forgot that his bishop would be hanging there. And I thought after queen takes b2, so okay, I'll show it again. So I looked at this, but yeah, it was just sloppy calculation. I saw this. I didn't see that this bishop was hanging in my mind. And then I thought, well, he just split my pawns up. So what's the benefit of that? And that's ultimately why I didn't go for it. Yeah, that's why I played knight bd4, something that I was more familiar with. Okay. It's not a mistake. It's not a mistake at all. Like, this is fine. This is completely fine for white. It's just that taking on c5, it would have had a strategical backing behind it. He played knight ce4, which is very thematic in these positions. And so I didn't play c3 here, which is, again, a very typical setup because I was scared about something. Maybe you can pause the video. Whoops, did not mean to click that, sorry. Maybe you can pause the video and try to think what I was scared of here. Okay, so yeah, I got scared of knight g4. I was scared of knight g4, and then I found no reasonable way to deal with knight takes f2, one of the knights taking on f2. And I understand that black would be giving up two active minor pieces for a rook and a pawn, which normally you don't want to make such trades. But I don't know. I felt it was kind of risky with not being super familiar with that. Like, I'm not sure if that's a plan here, like a typical plan for black. And I don't know. It felt a little risky to allow that. The computer says that, yeah, that's just really good for white. So let me just put that on the board, something like this. And I'm not sure what I would play, like, let's just say h3, right? And takes. The computer prefers white here by a fair bit. But again, my opponent was rated like 1300. I didn't want to, I don't know, this just felt needlessly risky. And I don't know, I didn't want to go down that route. So because of that, I played h3 here, stopping knight g4, which was actually okay. The computer is fine with h3, but there was no reason to actually be scared of knight g4. And my opponent played a6 here. So as soon as he played a6, I smelled a minority attack in the air. It's the only thing that makes sense, right? Otherwise, a6 makes no sense. So a6, I knew exactly, or I had a very, very strong inkling that he was, going to prepare a minority attack. And it's not a bad plan. I can't blame him. That's probably what I would be thinking here as black. He's got the minority on the queen side. Why not go for a minority attack? The only thing is that I haven't actually moved my pawns yet. So there's nothing, it's not urgent for him to create a minority attack, but it's a plan and not a bad one. So here I played bishop f4. It's hard to suggest other moves. Also, I wanted to gain some control of this, how would you say this, h2 b8 diagonal, because black, because black is very close to controlling that himself with queen c7, bishop d6, and having control of this diagonal. And if he does, then it's harder for my bishop to have much say in the game. I guess there still might be like b3, bishop b2, but then my c pawn is backward. So yeah, I wanted to get on this diagonal, so I played bishop f4. And then my opponent played bishop d6, and I traded. So again, just trading at every opportunity because of this IQP. So I'm happy to trade. I should have traded before, when I could have taken on knight takes e5, but yeah, I traded here. That was my plan too. After bishop f4, he recaptured, of course. Then I played c3, just securing the knight on d4. I know it's thematic as well. Whoops! Oh, come on! Does anybody know how to turn off that one-click thing in chess base? Please let me know in the comments. That's so frustrating. I left click on the board and it makes it the only legal move. I wish it didn't do that. So after c3, so it secures my knight on d4. It also gives my queen some squares to play to. Then my opponent played rook a b8. So, yep, it's a minority attack. Like, that's basically confirmed now that this is a minority attack. Wasn't surprising. And I played knight f5. So what follows is I make a series of knight moves, which I'm pretty happy with. I think they were pretty, these were some nice positional maneuverings on my part. I didn't play knight f5 to just attack the queen. I did it because I'm trying to exploit this IQP of black. So after knight f5, and he retreats the bishop, knight e3. So now putting more pressure on the d5 pawn. It's defended right now, but there is pressure on it. And my opponent played b5, continuing with his minority attack. And then here I thought for 6 minutes. Because I didn't actually remember or know how to deal with a minority attack. Reading my notes here, like, I forgot what the side is that's defending against a minority attack is supposed to do, but I actually think that there is nothing that you can do. Like, I think if black, or it doesn't have to be black, but if the side with a minority attack is attacking, that there's nothing you can do to avoid it. You basically have to allow it to happen. It takes some time for it to happen, so you can make a couple moves elsewhere. But yeah, as far as I remember, like, you can't prevent a minority attack. And but I was trying to figure out what I was supposed to do against it, because it was coming and it was annoying. That being said, I did actually come up with an idea on how to deal with it. And so I played knight e5. And he moves the queen because it's under attack. And then knight d3. And then I was actually kind of happy with that too. So I made a lot of knight maneuvers here, And I am blocking the d file now. However, I am stopping b4. So I've stopped his minority attack here because my knight covers b4. My opponent played a5. I played a3, g6, and knight c2. And again, I was kind of proud of all of my knight moves. Like, I think I can't count them, but something like 6 or 7 out of my last 7 or 8 moves were all knight moves. I did a lot of knight reposturing. I'm trying to remember why I played knight c2. I think I obviously I definitely had a reason. I can't remember what it was. Yeah, sorry, I forget. Because b4 is not a problem. It's already covered. It's possible that I just wanted to reroute it to d4. Or open up the e file. Yeah, I can't remember. But yeah, it might have been just to get off the e file. And then maybe play rook e1. Sorry, yeah, I can't quite remember. But I wouldn't have played it if I didn't have a specific reason. I just it just doesn't come to me at this moment. My opponent played rook b7, and yeah, I didn't quite know what to do here. But then, so I thought for a while, and then the move I played, I was pretty happy when I played it. So I played queen c1. Yeah, it wasn't the first move that came to mind, but again, when I played it, I was pretty pleased with it. And so here I think I had wanted to play queen f3, just getting the queen off the back rank and developing the queen and starting to put pressure on black a little bit. But that falls to knight d2, right? So that was a problem, and I was trying to figure a way to improve the queen. And so even though this doesn't bring the queen out, it does allow me to also then play knight f4, or even trade queens with queen f4. Again, just trading more material to highlight the weakness of this IQP. So yeah, I quite liked queen c1. My opponent played king g7. And so here, I didn't continue with knight f4 or queen f4 because I think there was a concern I had of queen takes f4, knight takes f4, and knight d2, which I didn't love. After rook d1, then there's knight b3. That knight is very well placed. I don't know. It didn't feel fantastic. It didn't really feel like I'm gaining ground. So I wanted to prepare that. And then I found rook d1, which is not an amazing move, but it stops the knight from going to d2. So now I am preparing queen f4 or knight f4 because the knight cannot go to d2. Plus, this is actually a pretty good place for the queen. So I liked my last two moves of queen c1, rook d1. They're not the first move that come to mind to me in this type of position because I don't know, typically I won't play a move like rook f d1. I'm more likely to play rook a d1. Plus bringing the queen to what looks like a passive square. Yeah, again, not the first move that come to mind, but I was very pleased with them when I played them. Maybe not very pleased, but I was pleased. So rook d1, rook e8, and I played knight f4. I can't remember why I didn't play queen f4. I think oh yeah, this is one of the okay, I remember why I played knight c2 now. I remember why I played, oh wait, no, do I? Yeah, I think knight c2. So the reason I played knight f4 is because I'm again putting pressure on the d5 isolated pawn. And that brings something else back to memory too. But yeah, I was putting pressure on the d5 pawn, and then I was planning something like g3 to protect that knight, and then play knight e3, hitting this multiple times, something along those lines. But yeah, queen f4 might have been good too. In fact, I'm going to put on the engine because I don't remember looking at this. I want to see what the engine says here. It might lag the video a little bit. Yeah, queen f4. Yeah, it prefers queen f4 by a little bit, not by much. It likes knight d4 too. Okay, let me turn off the engine. Yeah, so anyways, I played knight f4. My opponent played rook b7. And then here I became a little impatient. It was partly from being so tired, having only 2 to 3 hours of sleep, and then traveling over. And it was partly also because at this point I had 25 minutes left and my opponent had 40. So it wasn't like a huge difference. I mean, I did have 25 minutes, but those things combined made me feel that I had to start playing a little bit faster, yeah. And so I ended up making a mistake here, and I played g3. So again, my idea was to protect the knight. Let me highlight this. Was to protect the knight and then play knight e3, and then I'm hitting d5. That was the plan. But it's a bit of a mistake because oh wait, I also might have, I say that, but I think I also had a plan of knight g2 to e3. No, that makes no sense. No, I think I was right the first time. I think I was planning knight e3. That's why I played g3, yeah. But this is a mistake because it allows the very obvious move, which I simply did not consider at all, of g5. And then after g5, if I remember correctly, it's something like -1 eval, but not easy to find. The only move, as I remember, is you have to find knight d4 because that threatens this fork here. And then you actually, after the queen moves somewhere, I forget, but the moves are not simple to find. So yeah, the g3 was just a mistake, and it was from impatience. I could have just played any basic move. I think rook e1 was fine even, or knight d4. I needed to play it slower instead of trying to rush things, and I just simply missed g5. My opponent played king h8. So this is the only weird move my opponent played the whole game. I don't understand king h8. The only thing I can think of is that he was considering to open up the g file for his rook and then maybe push the g pawn. But that was a strange move. And yeah, I did not understand it at the time, and I still don't really understand it now. It was pretty bizarre. Apart from that move, my opponent played perfect. So this was an inaccuracy, king h8. Or maybe more than an inaccuracy, because it was more of a mistake because yeah, g5 was strong here. Okay. So then I played king g2. So I played king g2 because suddenly I saw that knight takes f2 is a threat here. Because knight takes f2, king takes f2. I think that's what I was concerned about. Trying to remember. I think that's what I was concerned about. And that's why I played king g2. Yeah, so if I made some other random move, like, let's just say I made a random move. Oh no, I think I was scared of this. Or was I scared of g5 first? I might have been scared of g5 first. So had I played like knight c e3, no, I was scared of knight f2. Yeah, so this is what I was scared of. So I was scared of knight takes f2, king takes f2, and then he can take on e3. Yeah, so that's why I played king g2. Because this was my plan, right? To go knight c e3 and then to attack d5. So I played king g2 so that let's just say he brings the king back. Here, my king... Wait. No, wait, what? I'm trying to justify my... what was I planning? I can't remember. Yeah, king g2 doesn't stop that. I don't know, it was a blunder. I can't remember why I played it. I know I was scared of I was scared of knight f2 though. I remember that. But I like if black just moved the king again, I'm not sure what I was planning to follow up with. Because knight c e3, because king g2 doesn't help knight c e3. I can't explain it. Oh, yeah, sorry. So it was, I thought I was protecting g3. So I was actually, so if we just go back here. So after g3, and move the king. Yeah, I was scared of, I was trying to protect the g3 pawn for some reason. So if I had, yeah, I think I was scared of, oh yeah, I was scared of this. I was scared of knight, okay, I remember now. I was scared of knight takes g3. This is what I was scared of. And I think this is also good for black, right? Well, we can't do that. That's what I was scared of. That's why I played king g2. But king g2, getting that on board here, is a blunder. Because again, I just didn't see g5. I never saw g5. So my opponent does play g5, and there's nothing I can do. I'm just completely losing. This did require some tactical insight, though. So I played knight d3, and then he sacks the knight on g3, and I recaptured. Now, Stockfish said that I could have put a better fight if I played a move like knight d4. I'm still losing. It's like -3 or 4 there. But at this point, I mean, as soon as he played g5, I knew that this was coming, and I was just basically playing out of inertia at this point. I knew that I was lost. I was just, it takes a while to come to terms with it. But yeah, he took on g3, f takes g3, rook e2 check. I went up the board. Not the best way to defend, but it's what I played. Queen e6, knight e3. There's nothing better. Well, everything is losing. I think the best move is like queen f5, queen f4 or something silly. But yeah, I went knight e3, rook takes e3, king f2, rook e2 check, king g1, queen takes h3, and then I resigned. Every move after g5 was really just out of shock. Yeah. So I lost my first game against the 1300. I think, let me open this up in another tab here. Do I have it in here? I'm trying to open up. Oh, I found it. So yeah, looking at the, when I ran this with Lichess analysis, yeah, the only inaccuracy my opponent made was when he played king h8 earlier. Everything else was perfect. He had a 96% accuracy rate. He played very well. And I just, let me get back to my window. Yeah, I just screwed up when I played, well, I was actually still okay after I played g3. This is -1, but it's not easy for white to play, as I say. So I probably would have been in trouble here because, yeah, again, the way to continue is very difficult to find. But it was completely unsalvageable after king g2. So I just missed g5 twice. When I look at it now, it's so obvious g5, like on the 2D board, but I was tired. It was this, and I don't know. I missed it. I missed it over the board. So, yeah, that was the first game. So just to recap that very, very, very quickly, the key points I wanted to say was, yeah, taking on c5 was better. The move I played was okay, but strategically, since this makes more sense, just trading material with that IQB. What else was there? I liked all of my knight maneuvers. Computer liked them too. I liked queen c1, rook d1. And then, yeah, g3 was sloppy. And then king g2 it cost me the game. Yeah. So it was a pretty short game. So that was round 1. Hope you enjoyed the video and some of the B-roll that I am going to throw in there when I edit the video. I am going to have a new video every 2 days. So every 48 hours will be another video. Round 2, round 3. I'll have some other content in there too, like some stuff I ate. And yeah, so stay tuned for that. And thanks for watching.